Welcome to Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. Our first Reddit post is from Viperite196. Oh, it's not your job, it is now. My brother has finally convinced me after years of trying that I should write about and post my story here on ProRevenge. I don't follow this subreddit regularly, but he is an avid follower and stated my story is worthy. So I'm here to see if he was right. Intro and backstory. My dad was a mechanic for 20 years, and for as long as I can remember, I drove him nuts because I would go around the house with a screwdriver he left out and take everything apart because I wanted to see how it worked. As I grew older, I developed an affinity towards computers and electronics, which led me to be that kid in high school who changed his grades, crashed the school district's servers, and used the netsend command with great success. I would spend my weekends either with my grandparents and uncle working on science projects or dragging my dad outside to help me fix my car, which consisted of him telling me that he would help once I got it taken apart. Those figure-it-out lessons were probably the greatest gift he could have given me growing up. I joined the US Army in March of 2004 and went into communications, or commo for short, 20FIVU, where I managed to go from PVT on when I joined to SGTF5 by the time I returned from my deployment at the beginning of 2007. After returning home, I was subsequently transferred from a light infantry unit walking everywhere to a mechanized infantry unit riding in an armored vehicle everywhere, and placed in charge of the battalion commo shop because the current person running the commo shop was scheduled to retire in a few months, and I was the only other NCO. This is where things got interesting, and my commo versus mechanics ProRevenge story starts. Commo versus mechanics. As anyone else that was in the US Army can attest to, every Mondays was motor pool maintenance, which essentially means go make sure all the tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, BFB, or anything else with a motor works the way it should. This included testing all the radios and communication equipment as well. If it didn't work, we filled out the maintenance forms with the correct shop and have them fix it. All the issues would later be consolidated into a report that the leadership team would review. If a vehicle was on that report, the leadership team wanted to know why it wasn't fixed. I ran my shop using the same approach my dad taught me, which was figure it out and don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution. One Monday morning, shortly after taking charge of the commo shop, I agreed and followed him over to the BFB that was giving him problems. After a few hours of troubleshooting, we finally traced the problem to the pulse slip ring. We double and triple checked that indeed was the problem, because one, slip rings in general have a low failure rate, and two, it wasn't something we could fix on our own. It required help from the mechanics because the slip ring required taking apart the interior of the BFB turret. So I went to the mechanics to get their help so we could fix the problem. This is when I learned the mechanics didn't like the commo shop. I was essentially told by the motor chief to FOF, and the slip ring is a commo issue, and it's the commo shop's job to fix it, not theirs. I was pissed at the response and tried to insist we needed his help. However, I was promptly shut down and told to pound sand. At this point, I was beyond pissed. I tried the official way. I even swallowed my pride and asked him nicely. Both times I was shit on. I decided I was going to play global thermonuclear war and teach him a lesson that neither he nor anyone else in his shop would forget. So I went to my guys and told them I would be back in about an hour or two because I needed to run home and grab some stuff. When I got home, I went directly for the garage and started packing all the wrenches, impacts, and sockets that I could fit into my portable toolbox. I also loaded up the portable air compressor and any extension cords I could find and made my way back to the motor pool. Once I got back to the motor pool, I had my guys locate every extension cord they could find around the office because I could only find one in my garage, and help me run power out to the BFB that we were going to have to fix ourselves. Meanwhile, I also had two of the guys run to the HQ and find me two of largest empty coffee cans they could find. I ended up having to tell them twice because the first time they thought I was joking. They cowed to understand why I needed a coffee can of all things. When they returned with coffee cans, I had everything in place. I had power, compressed air, tools, and a place to neatly put all of the bolts, nuts, and washers I was about to remove. Under normal circumstances, I would only remove the things that absolutely had to be removed. The fewer things to put back together, the better. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I had absolutely no intention of putting anything back together. It was about lunchtime, and I decided my way of fixing this issue probably was the best example to set for my team, so I sent them to lunch and told them I would handle this issue so they could focus on the other vehicles when they got back. For the next few hours, I proceeded to dismantle every single bolt I could find. I removed seats, interior plates, shelves, pretty much anything that was electrical or commo-related got removed. I would then place all of the newly removed hardware in the coffee can. By the time I reached the turret, I had filled up both coffee cans with nuts, bolts, and washers, so I had to go find something else to start putting this stuff in. Luckily, we had Ziploc bags by the dozen laying around the office. I grabbed a couple of those and went back to having fun taking apart the BFV. I finally reached the slip ring and managed to luck out. I didn't have to replace the slip ring after all. Turns out the mechanics didn't install one of the cable mounts, and one of the commo cables got snagged and subsequently cut. It probably took me less than 15 minutes at that point to replace the cable and missing cable mount. Of course, the fact that I completely removed everything in the way helped, because now I didn't have to fish the cable through anything. Once I replaced the cable and made sure all of the other commo equipment worked, I figured while I had everything taken apart, it would be much easier to fix any other problems they might have been having. All commo systems checked out. My job was done. Everything that I had taken out of the BFB was then gently and neatly stacked in the interior of the BFB. I put the lids on the coffee cans, zipped up the bags, pulled out my trusty Sharpie, and wrote bolts on each of them. Once everything was tidied up, I went off to find the owner of the BFB and let him know his commo issue was fixed, but he should probably have a mechanic look at his BFB because I had to disassemble some, and by some I meant most of the vehicle, in order to get to the part I needed to replace. And I can't remember how everything went back together. I stared out of my office window for the rest of the day waiting for the mechanics to get around to looking at the BFB. I still remember the reaction of the motor chief when looked inside that vehicle, and if I didn't know any better, I could have sworn his head rotated around 3 times and damn near popped off. His reaction was absolutely priceless. I knew he was about to storm into my shop in a fit of rage, so I got up and decided it was probably best to meet him outside in Motor Pool. As soon as I reached earshot distance, he started screaming and demanding I put the vehicle back the way I found it. However, I was having none of that. I simply shook my head and told him it was a mechanical issue now, and it was my job. I asked for your help in the beginning and was told no because it was your job. I'm just a commo guy. I didn't know what needed to be removed so I could fix the commo issue in the slip ring. So I removed everything. If someone from your team would have been there, I think this whole misunderstanding could have been avoided. That vehicle remained on the weekly report for the next 3 weeks while they figured out what bolts went where. However, after that incident, I was never told it's not my job ever again, and the mechanics were more than willing to help me fix any issues that came up. By the time I left the unit, we ended up starting to cross-train each other's team members so we could fix things faster as they came up. TL Drive needed help from mechanics to replace a commo part in a tracked vehicle. Edit formatting and grammar. Update. Thanks everyone for the upvotes and gold. I never really thought my post would have received this much attention. For the people who can't believe I made rank that fast. I found my enlisted record brief I still had from my NCO binder. So I went from own to a 5 in tours 9 emths. Redacted herb. This comment is from Mitamakinik. Sniff eye laddie, that brings a tear to me eye. That's absolutely beautiful. This comment is from Viperite 196. Thank you, sir. This comment is from Viperite 196. Thanks for the kind words. I think whole incident made him rethink the previous working arrangement. We were eventually deployed to Iraq together and ended up doing some amazing things. I'm a firm believer in smarter, not harder. Just took some convincing to show him I knew what I was doing. That was Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. If you like this content, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified of new uploads. We upload new videos every day. Also subscribe to our Patreon, as that will help us a lot. See you next time.